Welcome to Couched in Color with Dr. Alfiee. I'm your host, Dr. Alfiee. On today's show, we're going to talk about, as we do always, all things mental health, about teens, young adults, the families and communities that love them. Welcome. On today's episode, we're going to focus on a new topic that we have not really covered in depth before, and that is global mental health. One of the things that I know from my research and that I know from research on mental illness in general, depression specifically, is that a couple different statistics. One of the statistics is that according to the World Health Organization, upwards of 75% of people in low and middle income countries, under-resourced countries, never receive treatment for their depression. That is a staggering statistic. We also know that upwards of 40 to 50% of youth of color in the United States receive inadequate or no treatment for their mental illness. And among those mental illnesses, we are looking at depression and anxiety as two of the most prevalent. So it's really important for us today to think a little more globally and expand our horizons some and consider what are the ways in which we as individuals can have a positive impact on reducing those disparities that cause or that lend themselves to the burden of mental illness worldwide. Today's guest is going to help us out with that. So we're really looking forward to bringing her to you and sharing her story and her journey, as well as information about her organization. She is a mental health advocate. She is trained as a public health professional, and she's going to share with us a little bit about the kinds of work that she and her organization do to empower young people, people of all ages, with a focus on young people, to care for their own mental health, but also to build bridges and to build interventions and to build activities that empowers the people around them to center the conversation on mental health and to also take care of their own mental health. So stay with us. It is going to be a wonderful show, quite educational, and we're really looking forward to bringing this to you. Miss Beautiful, Brilliant Vanessa Adebayo. I'm going to allow you, if you would, please tell us a little bit about the organization that you run. And, I told you I won't be like you when I grow up, and all these wonderful things that you're doing. And just tell us a little bit about what your investment is in this area of mental health, particularly, if you would, as it relates to maybe younger people, maybe not just kids, but young adults as well.
Young adults. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to be on this platform. A little bit about me is that I am a global public health professional. I went to pursue my master's in global public health with NYU. And in that, I decided that it would be really interesting to do a program that was kind of different from your regular trajectory of 2 years in a classroom setting. So I did a 1-year accelerated program in Washington, D.C., in Accra, Ghana, and in Abu Dhabi. And on that pursuit for my, in that pursuit of my master, I ended up having a life-changing experience in Accra, Ghana specifically, when I was taking a social behavioral class. And, it was my first time really taking anything outside of the US. I was taking a class in the University of Ghana, but I decided that it would be great, as an opportunity to just learn about the mental health care delivery system as it pertains to Africa. And as we were taking that class, we had the opportunity to go on a site visit. It seems like that very moment is kind of what has led me to this very place that I'm in right now. And it was more so coming in contact with patients that had very little resources allocated to them, and then just seeing the place where people were more or less neglected. I also felt the stigma around just being in that setting and environment. And I think the biggest question that came to me was, how could people breed any healthy behavior in an environment that really wasn't encouraging people to get any better because of the resources available to them. I think I always share this story because I think it's so important that, I came in contact with an 80-year-old woman that was in the geriatric ward, and she immediately started profusely crying when she saw my classmates and I. And she asked in her native language, like, why are these people here? What did I do to deserve them coming to visit me? And that was because in 20 years, not a family friend, not a coworker, no one to visit her. And here she is. And so my organization and what I stand for is we represent the unforgotten, right? Whether that's youth, whether that's young adults, whether that's elderly demographic. Right now, a lot of our focus has been amongst young adults. But, I went on to do my master's thesis focusing on the effectiveness of social marketing campaigns to improve attitudes and behaviors towards mental illness. And when I presented, the only question I received from the board was, are you going to implement this social marketing campaign? Because this seems very feasible. And I think it's really just God. I mean, I'm a strong believer in God, because at that point, I don't have money, I don't have resources, I don't even have a job. How am I going to change the mental health care delivery system in Africa? But as God would have it, I ended up getting a job working in Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire for Save the Children. And as I was getting ready to relocate to a completely different environment, French-speaking African country I'd never lived in before, I decided to kind of take that leap of faith and try to implement something that I had put to paper. And so, what you've seen and what I've seen is really just a manifestation of something that I wrote down, did research on, envisioned, and now it's kind of become a reality. So the demographic we focus on has been youth, because we believe in terms of behavior change, they're more easy to accept some of the information that we're giving to them, and they're more easy and they're more open to being a part of the events and the conferences and the things that we leave open to people, especially on the African continent and even in the diaspora as well. So that's pretty much, that was a mouthful, but that's pretty much it.
No, it's not a mouthful. I think it's fantastic. And I think one of the things it speaks to for me, and what I would love to hear you talk a little bit about, is what is it like for you to be a young person who is this worldly and traveling all over the world with this mission? What is that like for you? Because I think that makes you quite unique among young people. And then before you do that, I want you to tell us the name of the organization, because I want to make sure people hear exactly what it is.
Yes, of course. So the name of my organization is Africa's Health Matters, focusing on non-communicable diseases and being able to provide people the proper resources that they need to live a healthy, fulfilling life. And in that, under the organization is the initiative called Africa's Mental Health Matters. And that's been our primary focus for the last 2 to 3 years.
Got it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been quite a journey. I think nothing like I'd imagined. I thought I was going to graduate, get a 9-to-5 job, build my career, and be in a nonprofit organization that's established, be a part of, change makers and advocates that can make a difference. And I think it's honestly kind of just shown me that we are powerful, like young adults, you, me, whoever you are. Like, if you have a dream, if you have something that you believe needs to be addressed, you can do it. I think worldwide, when you travel and you see so many different communities, and you have the pleasure and the privilege to be able to be amongst people who have lived different lives than you and had different experiences than you, it makes you appreciate really what you have.
Yes.
And it makes you realize that we're not all perfect. We all don't have it all figured out. I mean, I'm sure now more than ever during this COVID-19 period, is a testament to that. But it makes you realize that we can, any little change you can make, any little impact you can make is worth it. And I don't think the journey will end with me, but I hope it starts, and I hope that someone comes even after me to take the baton and move forward and try to do the very best to bring about change in the mental health space.
I love that. And I think one of the things that fascinates me about you and your journey, among many things, is one, that you are so young and doing this work. I admire that. And two, I think the fearlessness of literally traveling all over the globe. You've named so many places that you've either been to or lived or worked in. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about where do you think that comes from? This I would call it intestinal fortitude and bravery. Do you know what I mean? That allows you to do this work all over the world. What do you think that's about? Where does that come from for you?
Honest to God, I think it's God-given purpose, right? Like, I've always wanted to do something bigger than me. I never knew what that was. I think from a very young age, naturally, I love to always give back. So like Thanksgiving, being able to go feed the homeless, or Christmas, being able to, be able to give to the less fortunate. It's always been a part of me. And even in university and as an undergraduate, I mean, I remember starting a program called Girls Takeover. And I really just kind of penned it to paper. I was like, you know what? I want to do a community service event that empowers girls in the community, that they can achieve greatness, that they can get an education despite their socioeconomic background, and they can achieve what their goals and dreams are. And I remember putting it together and getting different people in the community to buy in. And I did it for 2 years before I graduated, but it really probably stemmed from something, because now that I look back, fast forward, it makes perfect sense that I'm where I am, because I've always wanted to just give back, and I didn't know to what capacity. But it's also just the whole traveling thing for me is it's a thing where I know that there's more to the world outside of my comfort zone and outside of where my day-to-day interactions are. And because of that, it's a yearning to understand the world, understand the people in it, and get a better sense of what the real life problems are. And like, can you imagine, had I stayed here, done the regular 2-year MPH program, probably would have never in a million years focused on mental health. It wasn't even on my mind. Right. I didn't even think anything of it. But because I had this different experience in a different country with different people, with different, experiences, I was able to find something that needed to be addressed. And I'm truly grateful for it.
Oh, that is lovely. So I want to pivot just a little bit and hear, because I've asked you to talk a little bit about your journey, and about how you came to be in this place, and about what it takes for you. I would say that you're a mental health activist, right? And a public health activist. So I want to hear a little bit about the work that you do with Africa's Health Matters, because I follow you on social media. I got to get me a t-shirt, so I'm putting my bid in for my t-shirt.
Yes, we're have to send it to you. We're gonna get your address after this.
But I see, I learned, and I know about an event that, because where we met was through Can We Talk, Taraji Henson's event last year. It was this time last year. Maybe in like a week, it'll be a year. I can't believe it's been that long. And, you had a fascinating story about how you got there, and, you just had an opportunity to enjoy that day. And it was wonderful for me because there's so many of us Black people from the diaspora present in that space, all passionate, like everyone passionate about mental health in some way. So that to me was really exciting and wonderful. And I wish we were in a space where we could do the exact thing again, but I know because of coronavirus and all that, we're not going to be able to, but I digress. What I'm really curious about is, what are some of the types of events that you do around mental health? And if you could pick out one experience that you would feel comfortable sharing that allows you to know that the work that you do around the mental health of young people has had or is having an impact, I think that would be great.
Oh, well, it's a loaded question. So first and foremost, it started off as a community service initiative. I wanted to see, okay, what would it look like for us to be able to implement a conference, or what would it look like for me to be able to implement a conference in an African country, which was first Ghana, and what would people do? How would they perceive this? I mean, I think what really keeps me going is probably from my first experience. So I did this tirelessly, flying back and forth from Abidjan to Accra, Ghana, for like, I want to say 4 to 5 months. And I was, I would work Monday through Friday, get on a plane, sometimes, and then of course flying within Africa is not cheap, so it would be super expensive, but I was so determined. I'd arrive at like Friday afternoon, evening, and I would have meetings from the time I land to the time that I leave Sunday morning.
Wait. I want people to have context. I want you to tell me, how long were these flights that you were on?
So the flights weren't long. They weren't long. They were so the funny thing is, so in context, there were $400 flights. Okay. But they were only 45 minutes long. Oh. Very, very short. So they were very short, and that's why I could do it. So Abidjan to Accra it's nothing. Easy. Okay. They're like neighboring countries. Yeah. Okay. So I would fly in, arrive Friday night, and have a meeting at a cafe. Like I would meet with policymakers, stakeholders, therapists, psychologists, anyone that would listen to me in regard to what I was trying to achieve. Okay. I didn't have money, I didn't have funding, but I decided, you know what, I'm going to start a GoFundMe. and I'm going to put it out there, and we're going to reach out to people as much as we can. And, I'm going to leverage my network, who I have in my space. I'll reach out to them and see what they can do and how they can help me. And it worked out for me that I was able to find the right people to believe in what I was doing. So we did it at, the Holiday Inn in Accra. I got a discount to use. I actually got the hall for free, and all we had to do was pay for the feeding. So I was like, oh, perfect. So I was able to do that. I advertised. I found, it was a long journey, and it was a journey by myself. I think in hindsight, it built character in me to be able to kind of move to the place that I am in now. And it was an easy journey, but it was worth it at the end, because then full circle to see so many people share their stories. I mean, it was amazing to me. I didn't know how much. I did this because I had an experience where I wanted to do something outside of my 9-to-5 job that would mean something. And I didn't know how much it would mean until I was there. And I saw all of these young adults from ages 18 to 30, 34, sharing their stories about what they had gone through regarding their journey with mental health. People were emotional, people were angry, some people were sad, some people were happy. It was a bunch of different emotions, but they were all grateful. I mean, to come to me after and say, Vanessa, thank you. Thank you. I just couldn't, I was overwhelmed. I was like, thank you for what? I didn't think I had done much. And I realized then that, I was going to continue. So I continued. We had another conference, which, we tried to engage you in Nigeria. And that was already stressful because Nigeria is my home country. I'm Nigerian American.
Okay.
And that was crazy in itself. I mean, just to do anything in Nigeria can be very, very, time consuming. But bottom line, I finished the conference, and that's when things kind of changed. I realized that a conference just wasn't enough. To put a conference out there is great. Of course, people learn. We're based off unity and collaboration. We find like-minded stakeholders, therapists, influencers, policymakers to come into the same space and talk about what the mental health care delivery system looks like in each African country that we go to. And then we do this through virtual, screenings of people who have done different documentaries in this country highlighting it. We do it through panelists by having a diverse panel group where, people are either in, policymakers, therapists, stakeholders, whatever, influencers, students. We have them share their stories. And then from there, we have a networking session that really highlights what organizations and resources are available to people locally. And this is an opportunity for people to be able to reach out and leverage that network. And so there's a bunch of other stuff that happened, but I realized it wasn't enough. One day is not enough to change the whole mental health care delivery system in the country. So this year is when we started to implement country teams. And, gratefully enough, there were people that already had been working with me that had the capacity to take on those roles as country ambassadors and then build their own teams locally. And it worked out in such a way that I was able to build a team in Nigeria, in both Lagos and Abuja, in London, in the UK, in Kigali, Rwanda, and of course in the US. And so, and then of course, I don't know if I mentioned, but of course, Accra, Ghana. So it was now that we are able to implement monthly events. And what that looks like are group therapy sessions, yoga sessions. We have mixers, networking opportunities. Really, what we're trying to do is create an environment where people can come and have an open forum conversation about anything related to mental health and wellness. And we do that in different creative capacities, but we're still building. And, we've had partnerships with Twitter this year, where we had an event for Black, mental health awareness at the New York headquarters. We've partnered up with, Yale University to do a mental health concept or mental health component for their Young African Scholars Program. So we're doing all of these things in relation to, one, bringing awareness, but two, being able to provide people with the proper resources that they need.
Oh my goodness. You sound super busy.
It's been crazy. I'm like, I don't know. Some days I'm drained, I tell you.
That's a lot. And I think it is wonderful because what you're doing in word and in action is you are demonstrating to people how mental health and wellness should be an integral part of their day-to-day lives. And, for those of us who are people of the African diaspora, I think what we don't always acknowledge and what it's growing, it's getting better. But one of the reasons I even started this podcast was because we don't get to have enough conversations about mental health and wellness and how normalized that needs to be, such that it is just like talking about, if you're stressed out, right? You should be able to talk about having depression or having an experience of depression or an experience or a bout with anxiety the same way you say, "Ooh, girl, I'm just tired and I'm stressed." And I feel like the work that you all are doing, where you offer opportunities for people to come together, right? We know it's a little different under COVID-19, but
Right.
not only that, to discuss it, but teaching strategies, right? So teaching somebody how to practice yoga, that's fantastic. I happen to be a big practitioner of mindfulness through my nonprofit. Weekly, we've been doing a midweek Wednesday 10-minute mindfulness meditation,
Awesome.
just to introduce people to the concept. And so this idea of having the opportunity to come to the spaces that you all create, I love this idea that you work with Twitter, right? Because that makes it like
Yes.
even more global. But having space to bring people together to allow them to have these kinds of conversations, I think is so critical and important. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about your experiences in working with a young adult population through colleges. It sounds like you've had some relationships with colleges and
Yes.
universities. Are you able to talk a little bit about, I think the one thing is, what kinds of issues are you seeing as popping up for Black college students, one, and then two, can you give us some examples of how your organization has tried to tackle some of those issues that you know are prevalent in this population?
Yeah, so we've worked with a lot of PWCs, and we realized that a lot of Black students in those populations sometimes feel like there's no space really for them, apart from like Black Student Union or other culturally related groups. Mental health, it really isn't a thing. So we found that we have a niche. Like we can bring a professional, and I'm not a professional, I'm a mental health advocate, but what we do is we have a network of professionals and therapists that, we're connected to. And so finding people like you and other professionals that also buy into these populations, we can bring them on board, seldom discuss exactly what it looks like to kind of start an organization like this for people who are interested at that age in doing nonprofit work on an international level, and then also having like a group session to kind of just talk about some of the issues that they're dealing with in regard to addressing their mental health. So by doing that, I've realized that a lot of students are having sometimes identity issues, like really trying to figure out, okay, where do they fit in? They have the pressures from their family to excel, but then they also feel like in school things have kind of already been written out for them. Like they're going and competing against a various diverse amount of students from different backgrounds, and it's like, okay, where do I fit in? If I'm not the best of the best, I don't shine. If I'm just average, I'm just kind of there. And it's also dealing with pressures from home. A lot of times, there are generational issues or environmental issues that have followed you now into university. And now that this is your first time as a student being alone without your family, it's like you actually are able to then identify what those core issues are. And then it's like, now how do I go about it? Where are the resources available to me to actually seek therapy because I'm dealing with trauma or anxiety or depression? There's a various different stories and things that people experience, but I think the biggest part of it all is really knowing, okay, who do I turn to? Sometimes you can't turn to your friends, sometimes you can't turn to your family members, sometimes people just don't understand or get it. So for them, it's now having that open space and that dialogue of, where do I go for help when I need it?
Okay, I really appreciate you articulating what these issues are, and I also appreciate the fact that you name a significant portion of your work occurs with Black students at white institutions, because I think it's important for people to know, that students of color at white institutions, they have unique needs.
Sure.
I happen to have gone to 3, and I would definitely say that my needs were very different at those institutions than they were when I was at Howard. Where literally everybody was Black, right? They were and literally represented the whole Black diaspora, which is fantastic. So I am encouraged that you all are doing this work, and I'm encouraged that students are finding an opportunity to use their voice. One thing that I really picked up on was that you said not only do the students benefit from what you offer, just in terms of their own emotional well-being, but then they're able to pivot that into doing their own kind of nonprofit work, right? And getting
Yeah.
engaged and getting activated. So all of that I think is fantastic because that's really what we want. We want young people to walk away from these events and these kinds of activities empowered, not just empowered to care for themselves, but empowered to know that they can go out and help somebody else, much like you did, right? Like once you got some positive feedback, it was sort of like off and running. So I think that that's fantastic. So what I wanted to ask, we're getting close to the end of our time. So I have this activity that I do with everybody when I can remember. Most of the time I don't forget. And I have these little cards called affirmators. And I've heard you say a couple times you're a person of faith. And so affirmators, I'm going to show the little box here. I don't know if you can see it, affirmators. And what the deal is with affirmators is it's just a way to, some people believe in positive affirmations. I really do. I meditate on positive affirmations. So what I do is I have these affirmators cards. And generally what I will do is every one of my guests, I will ask them to pick a number, and then I'll count that number out, and then I will read you the card. Now, when we weren't under COVID and in-home restrictions, I would have people come into the studio, and we would, I could do it in front of them, but we can't. So we got to improvise. So I'm going to ask you to pick a number from 1 to 10, and then I'm going to pick a card and read it to you. And then if you don't mind, I would ask you to just reflect on the card.
Okay.
All right.
5.
All right. Perfect. Let me shuffle. I'm terrible at shuffling. All right. So let's go. All right. I think this is a good one for you.
Okay.
So this is our card, is listening.
Okay.
I foster a heightened level of engaged listening in all my conversations, whether in person or over the phone. When I start to zone out or feel the urge to interrupt, I remind myself that it's better to tune in and listen, really listen to what the other person is saying. Because without good, attentive listening, I won't be able to, now shoot, what they just asked me? So the thing with the affirmators that should I have a little joke in there somewhere? So yeah. So that's yours, listening. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of resonates with me now, ironically, because I've actually kind of realized that in order to really understand people, you have to listen, right? And a lot of us, I know me, I love to talk. I'm like, I can talk from today till tomorrow. But I noticed that I get the most out of my conversations when I listen, because it really tells you where the person's coming from. It really tells you what the person needs. It really tells you more about the person's journey. And so, yeah, I've been practicing that a lot more in my conversations, and I think they've been more fruitful, and I'm still trying to kind of exercise it a lot more. But I think listening is great, and I think you learn a lot more when you listen. So.
Love it. I love it. So, wait a minute. Ade or Adebayo? Last name?
Adebayo. Yeah.
Adebayo. Okay. So, Miss Vanessa Adebayo, I am so happy that you agreed to join us. And it's been a pleasure. Of course, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And, I think you and your family are just beautiful folks. And I just am so encouraged and motivated and, what's the word? I don't know. I just admire your hustle and the way that you really have this global perspective, because it's so important. And the final thing I'll say is I looked up when you mentioned it. I said, oh, we can. My ancestry.com. So now they do DNA, and the largest part of my African ancestry is Nigerian.
Yes. Okay. Wow. You know whose jollof is better.
That's right. That's how I know who's the best. So thank you so much for joining us on Couch and Color. And of course, I'm wishing you all the best and all good things with everything that you're doing. And then the final thing before I forget, please tell people where they can get in touch with you or your organization, whatever the social media handles or emails or whatever you want to share with us.
Okay, so our website is africashealthmatters.org. Our Instagram is AMH_matters. You can email us at africasmentalhealth@gmail.com. And you can get in touch with me at Vanessa Adebayo at africashealthmatters.org. So
thank you. Thank you so much. And,
thank
be safe
you.
and hug the baby brother for me. Cause I'm just
I will.
adopting him. He's so
I
adorable.
know he's your son. Don't worry. When this is over, we'll definitely
That's my child. That's my child. Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So there you have it. A wonderful conversation with Miss Vanessa Adebayo, who is a public health advocate, a mental health advocate, and founder of the organization called Africa's Health Matters. Through her organization, we've learned that she does a lot of work empowering young people from all over the globe, people of the African diaspora, to take care of their mental health, to center their mental health, and to not only do that, but to empower themselves and the people in their communities to also care for and center their mental health. So we hope that you've enjoyed this episode. It was a joy to bring it to you, and we look forward to having you join us next time. Now, before I go, I just want to say a couple things. One is we hope that you will subscribe to our YouTube channel, Couched in Color. We also hope that you will follow us and subscribe wherever you get your podcast fix. So whether that's Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, Radio Public, wherever it is, please do subscribe and please share and spread the word about the podcast with everyone you know. We have lots of good episodes coming up in the future for you. It was a pleasure to bring this one to you. It's always a pleasure to bring new faces and new ideas to you. And as always, what we're wishing for you here is lots of love, lots of light, and my wish is that it is always informed by good, culturally relevant science. Take care.